Night in London held its breath the way only old stone can, steady, patient, indifferent to headlines, while inside the palace a quiet decision changed the weight of things. No trumpets, no balcony, no staged silhouette against floodlit columns, only a narrow room, a table polished by generations of hands, and the soft rattle of metal set down with more meaning than speeches ever carry. Keys do not belong to romance. They belong to responsibility. And when a monarch lays them within reach of the heir and the woman who steadies him, the room learns a new gravity. Buckingham has always been less a house than a mechanism, a central nervous system that conducts ceremony and crisis with the same impersonal efficiency. Its gates guard privacy, yes, but more than that, they guard continuity, routes through which paper travels, calls connect, decisions are carried like current from one node to another. To be given its keys, symbolic and practical, is to be invited into the circuitry. You are no longer a figure in portraits. You are a moving part. The king did not narrate the moment. He is too old for flourish, and the hour was too honest for it. His voice, when he used it, had the worn smoothness of a man who has learned that explanation often harms more than it helps. His hands were not theatrical, either. They simply revealed how time insists upon itself even in men trained to ignore it. He did not say "I yield." He did not need to. The gesture was not abdication, it was architecture, load shared before beams begin to groan. The metal on the table carried the rest. Wiliam understood at once. He has learned that the institution needs fewer words than the public imagines and more stamina than the public suspects. He had come to the crown's threshold 1,000 times in rehearsal briefings, audiences, handshakes that carry obligations home in their palms. This felt different. This felt like the moment when rehearsal becomes the performance and you discover the script is only half written. Behind him, not a step out of line and never in his shadow, stood Catherine, calm where he is intent, exact where he is instinctive, modern in sympathy and traditional in duty, the rare human bridge between the country's memory and its appetite for change. If the keys are a test, she is the answer written cleanly in the margin. Absence can be louder than outrage. The Queen Consort did not take that room, and the silence created by her non-appearance told its own story, one not of scandal, but of emphasis. The king had framed the future in practical terms: who will carry the strain of the day-to-day, whose judgment will be asked first, whose diaries will be allowed to reorder the building's heartbeat. For those who read palaces like texts, the paragraph was clear. This was not unkindness, nor a rebuke written in cold ink. It was the choice a sovereign makes when the institution needs a single center of gravity and too many orbits have begun to tug. It is easy, in an age of headlines that run faster than blood, to mistake intimacy for intrigue. Rumor prefers verbs like seize and plot. Reality prefers verbs like steady and share. The king has never been impulsive. He is not a man who bargains with today at the expense of tomorrow. He has also learned, late, perhaps, but thoroughly, that time is no longer negotiable. Health, whispered about in the way courtiers have always whispered about it, may have sharpened his sense of calendar and consequence. History has given him a long apprenticeship and a short reign. He would have it said that the brevity strengthened rather than diminished the crown. That is why the keys mattered more than any proclamation could. Behind doors that do not gossip, father and son have spoken more plainly this past year than in any other. The conversations are not romantic. They are about loads, about how much a day can carry without fraying, about the strange mathematics of duty in which delegation is not abdication but fidelity to the work. A sovereign who has waited a lifetime knows better than most how cruelly a title can consume a man if he tries to hold it and everything else. It is not less kingly to share. It is more enduring. Catherine's part in this is not decorative. The nation has watched her long enough to understand that poise is only the surface of something more durable. Through tempests of scandal that were not of her making, through the exhaustion of unending scrutiny, she has neither traded intimacy for popularity nor sacrifice for performance. People older than 50, those who remember the late Queen's and showy competence as a kind of national balm, recognize the echo. Catherine's competence is contemporary, her warmth unforced, her discipline quiet. That is the combination that keeps public affection from becoming a liability and turns it into the oxygen an institution needs when the air thins. None of this plays well in houses where grievance outlives usefulness. Men and women once accustomed to minor tides of influence feel the tide go slack. A disgraced duke finds that no corridor leads anywhere now. Two dutiful cousins discover that lineage without portfolio is only biography. A prince across the ocean in love with his hurt because it listens, reads the news and hears a door shut that he had already slammed himself. Resentment is a poor strategist. It leaks, it boasts, it pretends that destruction is proof of power. In the days that followed, the leak performed its old tricks, turning a quiet, sensible recalibration into the kind of noise that flatters those who make it and exhausts those who must govern through it. The palace did what palaces do when noise is not the point. It did not dress the moment in fanfare and thus give the rumor the ceremony it craves. It did not pretend nothing had happened and thus invite fantasies to do the rest. It simply kept working, with a slightly different rhythm. Diary secretaries who have seen 40 winters know how to change a pattern without leaving fingerprints. Red boxes moved along new paths. Meetings that used to end with "we'll ask the king" now ended with "the prince and princess will decide." Nothing defiant, nothing dramatic, only the slow establishment of a habit, which is how monarchies survive excitements. They digest them. Camila will not go quietly into a smaller frame. She has endured too much contempt to surrender to a new kind of diminishment without answering it with purpose. Those who underestimate her confuse softness of voice with softness of will. She will find a field where her presence is more than tolerated. She will choose work that makes it harder to dismiss her as ballast. In this family, redemptions and relevancies are seldom symmetrical. They do not need to be, provided the core remains intact. The core is where and stands. She is the house's conscience not because she lectures but because she does not. The late Queen's creed, service instead of spectacle, survives most honestly in her. When the system must shift, she attends to the bolts. If she is in the room and still, you may proceed. If she is not, think again. That night she was in the building, and stillness had the steadiness of assent. Wiliam felt the weight, privately and without theatrics. The question that presents itself to every heir presented itself to him, too. Readiness is a word that belongs to tests, not to lives. You do not pass into sovereignty because you have completed a course. You pass because the river bends and you are the next bank. Doubt, handled properly, is not weakness. It is an instrument that keeps a man inside his proper scale. He does not want a crown so much as he accepts it, and that acceptance is what the country, especially those not charmed by slogans, trusts. It is not romance to say that Catherine steadies him. It is fact. The record of 2 decades proves it more than any ardent description could. The week that followed taught the lesson of all such weeks. Institutions do not live by drama, they live by routine. Appear where you should, listen longer than you speak, put your name where it helps and not where it shines, make the call yourself when discretion is the value, delegate when you are the bottleneck. A sovereign can be dignified and human if he is not greedy for credit. An heir can be decisive if he is not defensive. A princess can be beloved if she never begs for it. Those who love conspiracy will insist that the act was a coronation in disguise. It was not. Crowns require law, liturgy, witnesses, and a country's assent. Keys require only trust. Trust is the rarer commodity, hard-won, easily squandered, unpurchasable at any price. The king extended it, the prince and princess received it without fuss. That is all. Yet for a monarchy trying to live in a century that will not make room for it unless it earns the right, that all is everything, the admission that endurance is a craft, not a magic trick, the recognition that the late Queen's quiet genius was not personality but method, the choice to imitate the method rather than the myth. In time, someone will write that the rain shifted tone in a room with no cameras and a table that remembered better nights. They will not be wrong. But perhaps they will also notice what the public, when it is not being hurried by noise, understands instinctively, that a crown kept steady by 3 people of workable temperament is safer than a courtful of dazzlers, that continuity, humbly managed, is more persuasive than 1,000 elaborate gestures, that sympathy without sentimentality is the grown-up language of duty. So the keys stay in careful hands. The work goes on. The nation, older than any of its news cycles, asks only for decency and competence. It will forgive almost anything for the sake of those two. In the months ahead, there will be matches to watch, schools to visit, charities to resupply with attention, memorials to keep, and the ordinary miracle of keeping the calendar from becoming theatre. If, when the day ends, the gates close on time and the lights go out in the right order, that will be achievement enough. The rest, the noise, the grievance, the insistence that everything is an outrage, is for those who do not have rooms to tend. It is not the end of an era. It is the beginning of a wiser habit. And if the habit holds, if the late Queen's discipline survives not as nostalgia but as practice, then the keys were not a secret at all. They were a promise, made in metal, to a country that prefers steadiness to spectacle and is old enough to know the difference.